so CC's up. So the way we're going to do this is start with your MCS. I'm going to surreptitiously time it. And then we're going to go in to talk about the chapter. And Kim, you will be leading comments. Check. All right. So CC, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. All right. In the dangerous world of Kalistar, Nyx Farley, a half-fae and archaeologist, has learned long ago that the only person that you can truly trust is yourself. Harboring a deadly secret, Nyx is intent on finding the Treasure of Plynn and believes it will bring her freedom. After a disastrous attempt at stealing from Captain Ran Ender, an infamous pirate, she is left with no other choice but to team up with him and his crew and find the treasure. However, Nyx and Ran are not the only ones on the hunt. Captain Alaric Fox, a cruel and sadistic pirate, is close on their heels, causing havoc at every turn. Nyx is thrust into a life of sea adventure, mystery, and unexpected friendships as she works alongside Captain Ran Ender, and they get closer and closer to the treasure. She also finds herself beginning to trust the pirate, who is encouraging her to embrace her secrets and not fear them. However, Ran has secrets of his own, which include the truth of why he is keeping Nyx close. Feeling betrayed, Nyx must choose between letting her fear or her heart guide her. Up against the proposition of losing Ran, who is the man she is falling in love with, she learns that sometimes the worst shackles are the ones of our own making. Ultimately, Nyx chooses Ran, and because he has taught her that freedom is forged, not found. Together, Nyx and Ran find the Treasure of Plynn, but are intercepted by Captain Alaric Fox before they can claim it for themselves. Ran admits and reveals his final, last, and most coveted secret, giving himself in exchange for Nyx's freedom. He leaves her with his ship, crew, and his heart. The end.
Good. Thank you. 2 minutes, 10 seconds.
How many?
2 minutes, 10 seconds.
Okay. I've been timing myself.
Not crazy, but
yes.
So let's help CC with development by asking her a question. So Kim or Justin, what question do you have after hearing this story? While you guys think, I'm going to throw one out. What kind of freedom is Nyx looking for? How does she define freedom? You can answer, yeah, if you have a thought, CC. Do you have an answer?
Yes, she believes that ridding herself of magic will finally set her free.
That's really important. It's a very narrow definition of freedom. Kim, you have a question for her?
I might have missed it, but why is Ran after the treasure? I was a little curious on what his obsession with it was too.
Good question. I didn't hear it either. Why is Ran after the treasure?
Ran believes that the treasure has a sword that will that makes him the rightful heir of the Fae lands.
Good. Justin, do you have a question?
Again, I might have missed this too, and it's kind of more of I know the answer to this question, but I just don't know if it appeared in the MCS. But what is Nyx afraid? Like, what is she hiding? Kind of thing like that. I think it was I forget if the triples thing was mentioned in the beginning of it. I was wondering if just about the triple stuff.
So that's previous knowledge you had that wasn't mentioned in this version.
Yeah.
Okay, good questions. So Justin, what was the peak of the story in this telling?
Uh, Probably Ran, giving himself up for his to protect his once sworn enemy of sorts. I think making that decision at the end of it, I would say that's the peak.
Good. Kim, agree, disagree?
I kind of disagree because I feel like with Nyx, because of the whole like her chains are like more internal than they are external, and I feel like Rand helping her realize that she's the one forging those chains and she can change her destiny is kind of that big shift in her perspective and her character arc. But me, that's not the peak. So, but that's where I was kind of leaning towards.
CC, who's right, or is someone else?
Kim is more on the proper.
So why do you think Justin said that? Justin identified the peak as being associated with Ran.
I don't know why, Justin.
Well, I'll tell you why. It's a matter of how well, there's three possibilities. One is it's Justin's deal, right? That's his identification. It's a possibility. Two is the one I believe is the right answer here. The explanation is that the way the story was presented, the emphasis from your voice was on Ran, as opposed from your voice being on Nyx. I'd have to go back and look at it more thoroughly. And of course, there's a third possibility, something else we don't know. So the suggestion for next time is that you try to breathe a little bit more and talk slower.
Okay.
And when you insert breaths into your telling, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to pitch each sentence slightly differently depending on their emotional tone. Right? If it's a rising action, you're going to sort of pace it that way. When you get to the peak, you're going to take a very slight breath and then hit the peak right on the head. What we want to have happen when you're done with the MCS is not this sensation of phew, right? Like a puppy that's been chasing something. It's a sense of, completion and no out of breath, okay? So as you're doing this from now until next time, see if inserting some breaths and pauses in there is going to help. Now, of course, that's going to use up some time, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm struggling because I've been timing myself and I'm at like always between 140 to 2 minutes.
So what that suggests is you need to do some more, not cutting so much as condensing.
But then I'm like torn because I'm running out of room and time to mention why Rand wants the treasure. And then that's why I narrowed it down to secrets instead of triple, because my MCS was 4 minutes.
I don't know if this is going to help.
It might
but
help.
I'm going to make a suggestion. Don't think about things at a very low level, right? Try moving up a level and telling the story.
Okay.
The way there's two ways this could go, right? I mean, you sort of decided it's not a story about Nyx and Ran, from what Kim asked and how you responded. So you may just jettison everything about Ran from this story, not completely everything, just massively de-emphasize him and just make it all about Nyx. She meets a guy named Ran, and that's really all you need to say. He helps her X, he opposes her sometimes. It's only by making those kinds of major cuts are you going to get below that time limit without rushing. So part of the reason we impose that time limit, and I'm also imposing an extra time limit for taking the breath, is to force you to cut things. And then as you're going through this over and over again, it's going to have different cuts each time you tell it until there's one time that you're going to say, okay, that's the one I like.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, yeah.
Will removing Ran, and I'm not saying no to the idea. I'll experiment with that. But does that then take away the obvious that it's a romance? Does the MCS need to speak to the genre? I guess is the better question.
Yeah, absolutely. But the question, so let's try to look big picture, not about this particular story. A romance is what? It's about someone meets someone else, and together they either are happy or unhappy, and then eventually they're happy. That's a romance. So you would need to restructure the MCS in order for it to count as a romance, because then you'd have to have a dual focus.
Mm.
And we've talked about the romance being a bonus element. So this story isn't necessarily a romance. It's, to me, and I could be wrong, of course, and it could change, of course, too, because that's another thing we're playing around with is where does a story naturally fall, right? Your vision of the story is naturally going to fall into a genre.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is you're directing it toward that genre, of course, but the other part of it is it's attracted to that genre because of its nature. And so I've been thinking all along, this is an adventure story, right? And the romance is sort of subsequent to the adventure, and part of the adventure is, Nyx's growth toward freedom. Whatever you choose, right, is going to be reflected in this very minimal version you're going to tell. And then the question, what we're working on here, and what we're always working on when we're telling our stories aloud, is we're working on getting that balance right, seeing what elements should be in there, seeing what elements shouldn't be in there. And then when we put something in there, we want to decide how much emphasis it gets. And then we're going to get them all to fit together. All those things are simultaneously going on in our mind, and eventually we're going to tell exactly the right story in the most efficient and dramatic way possible. I think the issue here, the thing I think you should work on next is freeing yourself up to not include everything, just include the most essential basics and breathing a lot between them so that you can deliver each of them. And it's okay to go over the time limit to start off with and then come back down and approach the time limit. It's very hard, right? You guys are operating at a very high level. And it's especially hard for fantasy and also science fiction writers because they have a lot of story to tell. Right? There's a kind of world building that isn't present in a lot of other, excuse me, genres. So the path to success is relevancy and sufficiency, right? And sufficiency is another way of saying efficiency, getting the fewest amount of words necessary so that the reader is drawn into your world and understands what's going on. Does that help, Kim? Kim, sorry. Does that help, Cece? You have a question, so ask away.
No, I'm just marinating on the feedback.
Yeah. Let's see what happens. I mean, I think the best thing in this particular case is to really think about telling it to a very young person. Kim's nephew, for example, right? How would you change the story to make sure that they got all the big pieces in their head after you told it? You want them to go, ooh, ah, wow, laugh, cry. So eliciting those emotions from a very young person is a great exercise, right? Their sense of story is fully developed. What they don't care about are details, right? They care about, I'll call them stereotypes or big story essentials, right? Elements writ large and not very detailed. It's always a good mindset. All right. So ready for comments, Kim? Cece? There we go. All right, so Kim, you're up. So please lead comments for Cece.
Before I start with comments, Cece, is this going to be a dual POV or is it just through Nyx's? Okay, just through Nyx. Okay. I was just curious with all that. So this was another great chapter. I'm getting so invested in this story. I feel like you really found your footing with this version of the story, and I'm just loving every minute of it. I thought the magic system was described well. Never once did I feel overwhelmed in this chapter, and I felt like the pacing was really well done. I was able to just seamlessly follow everything. I feel like Rand's moral grayness is coming across very well. I think it sometimes can be a really tough character trait to try to balance, and I feel like for the most part, you're doing a fabulous job. Now, me personally, I like my characters that are morally gray on the more darker shade of gray side of things. So maybe this is just a personal thing, but I think he's coming across just fine. My only critique, and I feel bad because I feel like this is getting super nitpicky, but when Rand first orders Nyx to be locked up, like before she shifts, I think I wanted a little bit of that panic that she felt at the end of the chapter to shine through, because to me, her decision to shift almost came across as extremely calculated, and for her to be spending so much of her life hiding that she's a triple, and then to shift, especially in front of a pirate who's a full fae, I almost feel like I needed to see more of like a feral panic to make that decision. And having that panic occur in two different scenes of the chapter, I think would really hit hard on the PTSD that she's obviously suffering from. But that was all I really had. Like I said, I really, really enjoyed this chapter and I'm enjoying the story. So I think everything's really well done.
Good. Thank you, Kim. Justin.
Yeah, I agree with Kim. I think one of the things I wrote down was there's a lot to love in this chapter, and especially, but it's also a lot going on. I agree with Kim. I think that with the shifting happening like in the middle of this chapter, I felt like it wasn't as much of a last ditch effort kind of thing, and it felt like as the character that you've been this is where I have to.
Did you freeze, Justin?
here?
What is up with your internet?
Am I here?
Start over from the one thing that you said about this chapter.
What? When was that? What? All right. What was the last thing I said?
Start over completely.
All right.
All right. Thank you,
there was a lot
Kim.
going on.
Justin, comments, please.
I felt there was a lot going on in this chapter, and a lot of great stuff. But I felt that this moment of shifting, it coming in the middle of the chapter, because you painted this picture of someone who's been hiding for so long, it didn't feel like a last ditch effort, kind of thing like that. I felt like it was just like she saw an opening and then she went for it, kind of thing like that, rather than like she had no other options. And because of that, I felt like it kind of glided over, no pun intended, that moment. And yeah, but again, that's me feeling like I have to be careful of is that me feeling because we've talked about this for a while and I know things about this character, or is it just me reading this chapter? So that's up for you. I also wrote down, there was one particular line, Lance says, so I say we throw her overboard and be done with this mess. Lance said, she's more trouble than she's worth, always has been. And the always has been for me, I was curious about, I wasn't sure how much this, Rand's crew knows of Nyx. I know that obviously Nyx and Rand have had their run-ins kind of thing like that, but Nyx not really recognizing the rest of the crew, in the way that she describes things. I wasn't like, it was the always has been that just kind of took me out like for a second of just like wondering, is there more history here than we're actually knowing, or is it just like, you know, the crew knows her because Rand's haven't had issues with her, but like Nyx doesn't. I don't know. That just took me out for a second, and I wanted to mention that was something that kind of got there. The other thing, the last thing was, so Nyx, when she shifts, is naked afterwards, but Rand isn't. And I think you had a line in there about it maybe being something about being experienced, like she can't shift with her clothes because of an experience, kind of thing like that. So I know that you included it, but I was still a little confused about that whole like situation, kind of thing like that, and what that entails, I guess, like how experience would allow you to also shift with your clothes. But again, it's magic, so you know, whatever. I just wanted to say that particular moment like was a little confusing to me. And I also did write out, I'm trying to get better with my romance stuff, CC, for you, because I don't read a lot of romance. But I wrote down, otherwise shouldn't Ren also be naked? Could be steamy, question mark.
Could be steamy.
Could be steamy, I don't know.
There you go.
I'm trying to get better with my romance notes. But that's all I had. It was a really exhilarating chapter, and this version of the story that you've been telling has been like really interesting from chapter to chapter, and I think it's been going in a really great direction.
Good. Thank you, Justin. Let's do a continuity check. There's a line in here that Nyx says to, I guess, herself regarding Rand, you have no idea what you've done. So, Justin, what does that line say to you?
You know, I was wondering about that when it was said. I think to me it just kind of sounded really threatening, like, you know, just yeah, all right, we're done here. I'm done being kind of like playing with you. You pissed me off for the last time. And then, you know, him using his powers on her at the end like that, like we don't know where she's going because she gets warped to wherever. Like it did to me, that line was just very threatening. It was just kind of like, you know, a solid screw you. We're done here. Get out of here. Anything like that.
What's she gonna do?
What is Nyx gonna do?
Yeah.
Hell if I know.
Chapter 4, what's she gonna do?
I mean, I guess it depends on where she gets warped to. But I think, I mean, obviously she's in an escapist mindset right now, so I think it's just figuring out the multitude of problems that are kind of on top of her right now. Of now people know that she's a triple, or some people do, but also like, how do I get this thing from this chest still? Like, I think it's figuring out next steps, because like this seems like a good chapter to figure out, all right, my last plan was ruined royally. How do I go from here? Kind of thing like that. It just seems like a recoup chapter of sorts.
But Kim, same question. And I want to add one thing to it. Do you think this is the worst things they're going to get for Nyx? Do you think they're going to get even worser, if that's a word? Or do you think they're going to get less worse?
I definitely don't think they're going to get less worse, but I think it's going to get worse for Nyx because of not so much what Rand's going to do to her, but the spiral she's going to go out into of being back in chains and being in a cage. Like, I don't think she's facing torture on a physical sense, but I think she is on an emotional sense. So I think it's going to get worse that way, because like it's clear that the chains are very triggering for her, and now she's being thrown in prison. So I think she's going to spiral. So I think it's going to get worse in that end, but I don't think and I don't know if I know this because I know the story, or because I don't think Rand's going to hurt her, just because he hasn't really yet. Like even the punch to the face, like Rand didn't do that. It was another pirate.
So what does that line mean to you? You have no idea what you've done.
I took it as her revealing that she's a triple, like the type of dangers that she just now opened towards herself.
So again, we sort of get a disparity in interpretation, right? Justin is seeing it as, well, yeah, you can synthesize them.
Yeah, but again, like I read a lot of the enemies to lovers, so again, I don't know if it's like those little tropes that I'm just kind of picking up on.
Again, the possibility is one of you is right, you're both kind of right, or there's some third thing going on. So which is it, Cece?
Kim is right.
Yeah. So the concern again is whether Justin's just coming at this from the wrong angle. Maybe it's a gender thing, because I also took it as being a revenge kind of thing. Does it matter? Maybe, maybe not. But when there's ever this kind of dissensus, I had a feeling I was interpreting it wrong. So that's what got me to ask this question. Was I read it one way the first time I read it, and then my brain sort of said, hey, I think you're getting this wrong, which is why I bring it up. But that's a concern, right? The question is, can we contextualize that line a bit better, maybe have some follow-up to lead into what's going to happen in the next chapter? Standard argument, right? Build tension, set up expectations, carry them out. Second comment for me is I think you could spend a little bit more time on orientation. The plot orientation is good, but what we don't see is what's her mindset going into this chapter, and what does she want to accomplish? We kind of know what it is from the story background, but I think you could reinforce that and give us more insight into who she is, and bring the reader in by letting them know what she's thinking about and what her immediate goal is. And the other thing that could use reinforcing is why is being a half-fae so bad? It's kind of mentioned several times, but it's not pounded on. It's not expanded upon in a concrete way that lets us really know that being a half-fae is really bad. And I'm reaching back to my memory of how they were illegal and hunted and suppressed. I think we kind of lost that in this chapter. So it's worth, I'd be wrong. Did you guys see that in this chapter?
Being a half-fae is fine.
Oh, okay. So
It's being a triple that's bad.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I messed up. But it's being a half-fae triple that's bad. Being a half-fae on itself is fine, and being a fae triple is fine. But so there's that combination is like super banned in this world. So that's something you need to underline a bit more for readers. And the last thing is, I'm going to encourage you to think a little bit about theme. We talked about this with MCS, and we talked a little bit about this with respect to how people are interpreting this line. And I also want to think about it in terms of peak, right? But you have all these threads here. What's the common element, right? So I'll give you an example. The Davies have done business with the McGregors, those who own the ship where the chest was found for generations. Is that line just sort of what weight are we supposed to assign that line? And when I ask about weight, I think what we're really asking about is what's the theme? How do the Davies and the McGregors fit into the overall message that the story is trying to deliver? Is there a linkage there? Can you talk a little bit about that, Cece?
I'm not sure I'm tracking.
So you mentioned that the Davies owned the ship where the treasure was found, or the McGregors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are they important to the story? The Davies and the McGregors.
It's like a checklist in terms of finding the treasure. I mean, they're important in terms of like themselves as characters, no, but like we got the chest from the McGregors, and then we're going to find out the Williams are the ones that have the key. They're just like They're just destinations, like an X marks the spot.
So one thing that may help you to pull this thing together is to think about how those kinds of details are linked together thematically. And maybe it'll just pop in, maybe it won't, maybe you can cut out this kind of thing, maybe you can't. But the more these things have a thematic resonance, I'm just going to spin this out. The Davies were the first Half-Fae Triples. Whatever. This is a crappy Star Wars, not good Star Wars, but bad Star Wars way of going about it, right? Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter or something. Can't even block that from my memory. But that's the kind of linkage we're looking for. Something that imbues these people with more meaning than just a waypoint along the way. It's something to think about.
Well,
Right.
I will. Okay. Yeah.
So thoughts in general, CC?
No, this is good. This is helpful.
And it's coming along fine. The continuity is good. The thing I really like this time was you've been able to maintain the density. Very hard to do, right? Which means you're pacing, the amount of story you're allocating per chapter is good. You're still writing very densely. There's a lot of stuff going on, which I think is just you, right? I think that's part of the value you're delivering. The good side of that is that the story is matching the density. So I think that's going very well.
Thank you.
Barty delivers the tools, guidance, and support you need to produce compelling novels. Our well-researched and thoroughly tested approach includes our minimum complete story, a 90-second exercise that keeps your writing on track while fueling creativity. Barty Publishability Index, a 23-dimension checklist that offers attainable goals and provides actionable feedback. And our brand new comprehensive character developer that helps you construct unforgettable characters. Come see for yourself at bartsy.com today. Try our workshop or enter our first chapter contest. Then, when you're ready, Elite Membership delivers writing groups, personal coaching, and a curated community. With Bartsy, your work will captivate everyone, from agents to publishers, and, most importantly, your readers.